dead, to begin with. As dead as a doornail. There is no doubt that Marley was dead. Now, this must be distinctly understood, and nothing wonderful can come from the story I'm going to relate. Scrooge never painted out old Marley's name. There it stood years afterwards above the warehouse door, Scrooge and Marley. The firm was known as Scrooge and Marley. Sometimes people new to the business called Scrooge, and sometimes Marley. Scrooge answered to both names. It was all the same to him. He was a tight-fisted hand at the grindstone, Scrooge, a squeezing, wrenching, clutching, covetous old sinner. He carried his own low temperature always about with him. No warmth could warm, no wintry weather chill him. Nobody ever stopped him on the streets to say with gladsome looks, "My dear Scrooge, how are you?" No beggar ever implored him to bestow a trifle. But what did Scrooge care? It was the very thing he liked, to edge his way along the crowded paths of life, wanting all human sympathy to keep its distance. Now, one day, of all the good days in the year, on Christmas Eve, Scrooge sat busy in his counting house. It was cold, bleak, biting weather, foggy withal. It had not been light all day. The door to Scrooge's office was kept open so that he might keep an eye upon his clerk, Bob Cratchit, who worked in a dismal little cell beyond. Now, the fire in Scrooge's office was very small, but the fire in his clerk's office was so very much smaller that it seemed like one coal. Suddenly, a cheerful voice pierced the cold. "A Merry Christmas, Uncle! God save you!" "Ah, humbug! Christmas a humbug? Uncle, you don't mean that, I'm sure." "I do. What right have you to be merry or poor enough? Oh, what right have you to be dismal? What reason have you to be morose? You're rich enough." "Bah, humbug! Don't be angry, Uncle. What else can I be when I live in such a world of fools as this? Merry Christmas, out upon Merry Christmas. What's Christmas time to you but a time for paying bills with no money, a time for finding yourself a year older and not an hour richer? If I could work my will, every idiot who went about with Merry Christmas on his lips would be boiled in his own pudding and buried with a stake of holly through his heart. Uncle, nephew! Keep Christmas in your own way, let me keep it in mine. Keep it? But you don't keep it. Let me leave it alone then. Much good may it do me, much good it has ever done me. There are many things from which I have derived good, by which I have not profited, I dare say, Christmas among the rest. But I am sure with all my heart that I have always thought of Christmas time as a good time, a kind, gentle, thoughtful time, the only time I know of in the long calendar of the year when men and women seem by one consent to open their shut-up hearts freely and see those below them as if they really were fellow passengers to the grave and not another race of creatures bound on other journeys. And therefore, Uncle, though it has never put a scrap of gold or silver in my pocket, I believe that it has done me good and will do me good, and I say God bless it. You're quite the powerful speaker, sir. It's a wonder you don't go into Parliament. Don't be angry, Uncle. Come, dine with us tomorrow. I would just as soon dine in the fiery depths of hell. But why? I ask nothing of you. I want nothing from you. Good afternoon. I am sorry with all my heart to find you so resolute. But I have made my trial in homage to the season, and I'll keep my Christmas spirit to the last. And therefore, Uncle, a Merry Christmas, good afternoon, and a Happy New Year, good afternoon! His nephew left the office without an angry word. He stopped at the outer office to bestow a blessing of the season on Bob Cratchit, who, cold as he was much warmer than Scrooge, for he returned them kindly. There's another idiot, my clerk, with 15 shillings a week and a wife and family, talking about a Merry Christmas. I'll retire to Bedlam. Now, the clerk, in letting Scrooge's nephew out, had let a solicitor in. He stood in Scrooge's office and bowed cordially. Scrooge and Marley's, I believe. Do I have the pleasure of addressing Mr. Scrooge or Mr. Marley? Mr. Marley's been dead these 7 years. He died 7 years ago this very night. No doubt his liberality is well represented by his surviving partner. At this festive season of the year, Mr. Scrooge, it is more than usually desirable that we should make some slight provision for the poor and destitute. Are there no prisons? Oh, yes, plenty of prisons. And the union workhouses are still in operation? Yes. Still, I wish I could say they were not. The treadmill and the poor law are still in full vigor. Both very busy, sir. Good. From what you had said at first, I thought something had occurred to stop them in their useful course. I'm very glad to hear it. Under the impression that they scarcely furnish Christian cheer of mind and body to the multitude, a few of us are endeavoring to raise a fund by which means to buy the poor and destitute some meat and drink and means of warmth. What should I put you down for? Nothing. Oh, you wish to remain anonymous. I wish to be left alone. Since you asked me what I wish, that is my answer. I don't make merry myself at Christmas, and I can't afford to make idle people merry. I help to support the establishments I mentioned. Those that are badly off must go there. Oh, many can't go there, and many would rather die. Well, if they'd rather die, they'd better do it and decrease the surplus population. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. And Merry Christmas to you. Ah! In the meantime, the fog and darkness thickened so that people ran about with flaring links offering their services to go before horses and carriages to conduct them on their way. A young carrier stooped down at Scrooge's keyhole to regale him with a Christmas carol. God bless thee, merry gentle. Bah! Go away! At length, the hour of shutting up the counting house had arrived. Scrooge dismounted from his stool and tacitly admitted the fact to his expectant clerk, quickly snuffed his candle out, picked up the coat tree, and prepared to leave. You'll want all day tomorrow, I suppose. If quite convenient, sir. Well, it's not convenient, and it's not fair. If I was to stop you half a crown, you'd think yourself ill-used, I'll be bound. And yet you don't think me ill-used when I pay a day's wages for no work. It's only once a year, sir. A poor excuse for picking a man's pocket every 25th of December. Still, I suppose you must have the whole day, be here all the earlier next morning. Oh, I will be, sir. Thank you, sir. And Merry Christmas to you, sir. Ah! Humbug! Scrooge walked out with a growl. He took his usual melancholy dinner in his usual melancholy tavern, and having read all the newspapers and beguiled the rest of the evening with his banker's book, went home to bed. Now the yard was so dark that even Scrooge, who knew its every stone, was fain to grope about with his hands. Now, it is a fact that there was nothing at all particular about the knocker on Scrooge's door, except that it was very large. But this evening, Scrooge, having his key in the lock of the door, saw in the knocker not a knocker, but Marley's face. It had a dismal light about it, and it looked at Scrooge as Marley used to look, with its ghostly spectacles turned up upon its ghostly forehead. Its hair was curiously stirred, as if by breath or hot air, and though its eyes were wide open, they were perfectly motionless. That and its livid color made it horrible. As Scrooge stared fixedly at this phenomenon, it was a knocker again. Scrooge stepped inside and then went up the stairs, then down the cavernous hallway to his chamber. He opened the door, stepped inside and locked the door behind him. Double locked the door, which was not his custom. Thus secured against surprise, he took off his cloak, his hat, and his cravat, put on his nightshirt, his slippers, and his nightcap, and sat down before the fire to take his gruel. It was a very low fire indeed. Scrooge was obliged to sit close to it and brood over it. Suddenly, a bell began to ring, softly at first, then getting louder, then joined by others, and then stopping suddenly. It was succeeded by a loud clanging sound deep down below, as if some person were dragging a heavy chain over the casks in the wine merchant's cellar. The cellar door blew open with a booming sound. And then he heard the chains much louder on the floor below. Then coming up the stairs, then coming straight towards his door. Come on, still, I won't believe it. Scrooge. What do you want of me? Much. Who are you? In life, I was your partner, Jacob Marley. Humbug. You don't believe in me? I don't. You might be an undigested bit of beef, a blot of cheese, a crumb of potato, a fragment of an underdone potato. There's more of gravy than of grave about you, whatever you are. Dreadful apparition, why do you torment me? Man of worldly mind, do you believe in me or not? I do. I must. But tell me, why do spirits walk the earth, and why do they come to me? It is required of every man that the spirit within him should walk abroad among his fellow men and travel far and wide. But if that spirit goes not forth in life, it is condemned to do so after death. Tell me more. In life, I never walked beyond our counting house, never roved beyond the narrow limits of our money-changing home. And now weary journeys lie before me. You are fettered. Tell me why. I bear the chain I forged in life. I made it link by link and yard by yard. I girded it of my own free will, and of my own free will I bore it. Is its pattern strange to you, or would you know the weight and length of the strong coil you bear yourself? It was full as heavy and as long one 7 Christmas Eves ago. You have labored on it since. It is a ponderous chain. 7 years dead and traveling all the time? The whole time! No rest, no peace, incessant torture of remorse. Oh, you might have got over a great quantity of ground in 7 years, captive bound and double ironed, not to know that any Christian spirit working kindly in its little sphere, whatever it may be, is sure to find its mortal life too short for its vast means of usefulness. Not to know that no space of regret can make amends for one life's opportunity misused. Yet such was I. Oh, such was I. Oh, but you were always a good man of business. Business! Mankind was my business. The common welfare was my business. Charity, mercy, forbearance, benevolence were all my business. The dealings of my trade were but a drop of water in the comprehensive ocean of my business. How it is that I appear before you now in a shape that you can see, I may not tell. I have sat invisible beside you many and many a day. That is no light part of my penance. I am here tonight to warn you that you have yet a hope and chance of escaping my fate. Oh, Jacob, you were always very good to me. You will be haunted by 3 spirits. Is that the chance and hope you mentioned? It is. I think I'd rather not. Without their visits, you cannot hope to shun the path I tread. Expect the first when the clock strikes 1. Oh, couldn't I have them all at once and get it over with? Look! To see me no more. Look, too, that for your own sake you remember what has passed between us. The ghost stepped backwards from him, and with each step it took, the window raised itself a little, so that by the time the spectre reached it was wide open. Incoherent sounds of lamentation and regret, wailings inexpressibly sorrowful and self-accusatory rang out. The spirit joined in the mournful dirge and floated out upon the bleak, dark night. Scrooge followed to the window. Brave in his curiosity, he looked out. The air was filled with phantoms, wandering hither and thither in restless haste. Each one of them bore a chain not unlike Marley's ghost. Now, whether these creatures faded into mist or mist enshrouded them, he could not tell. But they and their phantom voices faded all together, and the night became as it had been when he walked home. Scrooge closed the window and went to check the door through which the ghost had entered. Double locked as he had locked it, and the bolts were undisturbed. He started to say humbug, but stopped at the first syllable. And much in need of repose, he went straight to bed and fell asleep upon the instant. He awoke. It was so dark that, looking out of bed, he could scarcely distinguish between the transparent windows and the opaque walls of his chamber. He was endeavoring to pierce the darkness with his ferret eyes when a neighboring church struck the 4 quarters. And so he listened for the hour, from 6 to 7, and 7 to 8, and regularly up to 12. Scrooge sat in his bed and waited restlessly as the minutes passed. Quarter past. Half past. Sounded with a deep, dull, melancholy 1. Lights flashed up upon the instant, and the curtains to his bed were drawn. Scrooge found himself face to face with the unearthly creature who drew them. It was a strange figure, like a child, yet not so like a child as viewed through some supernatural medium. Are you the spirit whose coming was foretold me? I am. Who are you? I, the ghost of Christmas past. Long past? No, your past. Might I inquire as to why you are here? Your welfare. Take heed, rise, and walk with me. the window, clasped its robe in supplication. I am mortal and liable to fall. Bear but the touch of my hand upon your heart, and you will be upheld in more than this. As these words were spoken, they passed through the walls and found themselves in the busy thoroughfares of the city. It was made plain enough by the dressing of the shops that it was Christmas time. The ghost stopped before a certain warehouse door. Good heavens! I was bred in this place. I was a boy here. Do you know it? Know it? I was apprenticed in this place. Why, it's old Fezziwig. Oh, bless his heart! It's Fezziwig alive again! Yoo-hoo! Ebenezer! Dick! Oh, and Dick Wilkins! Oh, he was very much attached to me, was Dick. Poor dear Dick. Christmas, Ebenezer! Christmas, Dick! Let's have no more work tonight. Let's have the shutters up before a man can say Jack Robinson. Clear away, my lads. Let's have plenty of room here. Chin up, Ebenezer. Hilly-hoo, Dick. Oh, and there's Mrs. Fezziwig. Oh, and their darling daughters, and oh, the young men whose hearts they broke. Oh, and they're all clapping and dancing, and oh, look at Fezziwig and the missus dancing, and everybody is clapping and laughing, and oh, look at the food. Oh, the minced pies, the pudding, oh, and the punch. Oh, everyone's so full of happiness. Oh, wonderful Fezziwig. A small matter to make these silly folks so full of gratitude. Small? Why is it not? He has spent but a few pounds of your mortal money, 3 or 4 perhaps. Is that so much that he deserves this praise? It isn't that, Spirit. It isn't that. He has the power to make us happy or unhappy, to render our service light or burdensome, a pleasure or a toil. Say that his greatness lies in looks and words and things so slight and insignificant that it's impossible to count and add them up. Oh, what then? Well, the happiness he gives is just as great as if it cost a fortune. Oh, what's the matter? Nothing in particular. Oh, something, I think. No, I should just like to be able to have a word or two with my clerk just now, that's all. My time grows short. Quick! Now, this was not addressed to Scrooge, nor to anyone whom he could see, but it had an immediate effect, for again Scrooge saw himself. He was older now, a man in the prime of life, and he was not alone, but sat at the side of a fair young girl in whose eyes there were tears. It matters little to you, very little. Another idol has displaced me. What idol has displaced you? A golden one. Oh, this is the even-handed dealing of the world. You fear the world too much. I have seen your nobler aspirations fall off one by one until the master passion gain engrosses you. I am not changed towards you. Our contract is an old one. When it was made, we were both poor and content to be so. You are changed. When it was made, you were another man. I was a boy then. That which promised happiness when we were one in heart is fraught with misery now that we are two. How often and how keenly I have thought of this, I cannot say. It is enough that I have thought of it and can release you. Have I ever sought release? In words? No. Never. In what then? In a changed nature, in an altered spirit, in another atmosphere of living, in all that has made my love of any worth of value in your heart. Tell me, if this had never been between us, would you seek me out and try to win me now? No? You think not? I would gladly think otherwise if I could. I release you with a full heart for the love of him you once were. May you be happy in the life you've chosen. No, Spirit, no. Show me no more. I cannot bear it. Leave me. Take me back. Hold me no longer. Now, in the struggle, if that can be called a struggle, in which the ghost, with no visible means of resistance on its own part, was completely undisturbed by any effort of its adversary, Scrooge seized the extinguisher cap and plunged it down upon the spirit's head. Suddenly, he realized he was in his own bedroom. He gave the cap a parting squeeze and... nothing. Scrooge had barely time to reel to bed before falling into a deep, deep sleep. Awaking in the middle of a prodigiously tough snore and looking out of bed to get his bearings, Scrooge had no occasion to be told that the clock was again upon the stroke of 1. Being prepared for almost anything, he was not, however, prepared for nothing. And consequently, when the hour bell struck and no shape appeared, he was overcome with a violent fit of trembling. Scrooge lay in his bed, the very core and center of a blaze of ruddy light. He began to suspect that the source and secret of this ghostly light lay in the adjoining room. This thought taking full possession of his mind, he got up and shuffled softly in his slippers towards the door. The moment Scrooge's hand was on the lock, a strange voice called him by his name and bade him enter. In easy state, upon the sofa there sat a jolly spirit, glorious to behold, and he held a glowing torch, not unlike Plenty's horn, and he held it up, high up, to shed its light on Scrooge. Come in! Come in and know me better, man! Scrooge did as he was told and bowed his head before the spirit. I am the ghost of Christmas present. Look upon me! You've never seen the likes of me before. No, spirit, I have not. Have you never walked forth with the younger members of my family? I have not. Have you many siblings, spirit? More than 1,800. A tremendous family to provide for. Spirit, conduct me where you will, for tonight, if you have aught to teach it, let me profit by it. Touch my robe. Scrooge did as he was told and held it fast. They were on the city streets on Christmas morning. The poulterers were still half open, and the fruiterers were radiant in their glory. Soon the steeples would call good people all to church and chapel, and away they came, flocking through the streets. Now, the sight of these poor revelers appeared to interest the spirit very much, for he stood with Scrooge and sprinkled incense on their dinners as they passed. It was a very uncommon kind of torch, for once or twice, when there were angry words between two dinner carriers, he shed a few drops of water on them from it, and their good humor was restored directly, for they said that it was a shame to quarrel on Christmas Day, and so it was. Is there a peculiar flavor you sprinkle from your torch? There is, my own. Would it apply to any kind of dinner on this day? To any kindly given. To a poor one most. Why a poor one most? Because it needs it most. They went on, invisible, into the suburbs of the town, straight to Scrooge's claws. And at the threshold of the door, the spirit stopped and smiled to bless Bob Cratchit's dwelling with a sprinkling from his torch. Then up rose Mrs. Cratchit, dressed out but poorly in a twice-turned gown, and she laid the cloth, assisted by Belinda Cratchit, second of her daughters, while Master Peter Cratchit plunged a fork into a saucepan of potatoes. Then two younger Cratchits, boy and girl, came tearing in, screaming, that outside the baker's they had smelt the goose and known it for their own. And basking in luxurious thoughts of sage and onion, these young Cratchits danced about the table. Oh, whatever has got your precious father then, and your brother Tiny Tim, and your sister Martha? Here's Martha, Mother. My, how late you are, my dear. We had a deal of work to finish up last night, Mother, and had to clear away this morning. Oh, well, so long as you are come. Here, have a seat before the fire. No, Martha! Father's coming! Hide, Martha, hide! And so Martha hid herself, and in came little Bob the father with Tiny Tim upon his shoulder. Alas for Tim, he bore a wooden crutch, and his legs were supported by an iron frame. Why, where's our Martha? Not coming, I'm afraid. Not coming on Christmas Day. Father! Martha! And how did Tim behave? Oh, as good as gold and better. He gets so thoughtful sitting all alone so much and thinks the strangest things you ever heard. He told me coming home that he hoped that people saw him in the church and that it might be pleasant to them to remember on Christmas Day who made lame beggars walk and blind men see. Oh, but he's growing strong and hearty in spirit and in body. Tiny Tim was escorted to his little stool before the fire while Master Peter and the two younger Cratchits went to fetch the goose with which they soon returned in high procession. Such a bustle ensued that one would think a goose the rarest of birds. Mrs. Cratchit made the gravy hissing hot, while Master Peter mashed the potatoes with incredible vigor. Soon the dishes were set on, and grace was said. I don't believe there has ever been such a bird as the one we see prepared here for our feast. Its tenderness and flavor, size and cheapness were the themes of universal admiration. And when the dinner was finished and the cloth was cleared, the hearth swept out and the fire made up, the compound in the jug tested and considered perfect, and at Bob Cratchit's elbow stood the family collection of glass, 2 tumblers and a custard cup without a handle. These held the hot stuff from the jug, however, as good as golden goblets would have done. And Bob served them out with beaming looks, while the chestnuts in the fire sputtered and cracked noisily. A Merry Christmas to us all, my dears. God bless us. God bless us, everyone. Spirit, tell me, will Tiny Tim live? I see an empty stool in the poor chimney corner, and a crutch without an owner carefully preserved. If these shadows remain unaltered by the future, the child will die. No, Spirit, no, say he will be spared. If these shadows remain unaltered by the future, none other of my race shall find him here. What then? If he be like to die, he'd better do it and decrease the surplus population. Mr. Scrooge, I give you Mr. Scrooge, the founder of the feast. The founder of the feast, indeed. I wish I had him here. I'd give him a piece of my mind to feast on. Dear, the children, Christmas Day. Oh, it should be Christmas Day, I am sure, when one drinks to the health of such a hard, odious, unfeeling man as Mr. Scrooge. Oh, you know he is, Robert. Nobody knows it better than you do. My dear, Christmas Day. I'll drink to his health for the day's sake and for yours, not for his. A long life to him, a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. He'll be very merry and very happy, I have no doubt. In the meantime, it was getting dark and snowing pretty heavily. And as Scrooge and the ghost made their way along the streets, the brightness of the roaring fires and kitchens, parlors, and all sorts of rooms was wonderful. It was a great surprise to Scrooge to hear a hearty laugh. It was an even greater surprise to Scrooge to recognize it as his nephew's. He called Christmas a humbug, as I live, and he believed it too. Oh, he's a comical old fellow, and not so pleasant as he might be. However, his offenses carry their own punishment, and I have nothing to say against him. His wealth is of no use to him. He doesn't make himself comfortable with it. He doesn't do any good with it. I couldn't be angry with him if I tried. Who suffers his ill whims most? He himself, always. Here he takes it on himself to dislike us and won't come and dine with us. What's the consequence? He misses some pleasant moments which could do him no harm. I mean to give him the same chance year after year, whether he likes it or not, for I pity him. Oh, he's given us plenty of merriment, I'm sure, and it would be ungrateful not to drink his health. Here is a glass of mulled wine ready to our hand at the moment, and I say, Uncle Scrooge, a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. You wouldn't take it from me, but may you have it nevertheless. Uncle Scrooge! Scrooge had imperceptibly become so gay and light of heart that he would have pledged the unconscious company in return and thanked them in an inaudible speech if the ghost had given him time. But the entire scene seemed to pass off in the last words spoken by his nephew, and he and the ghost were again upon their travels. It was a long night, if it were only a night, but Scrooge had his doubts of this, for the entire Christmas season seemed to be encompassed within the space of time they passed together. It was strange, too, that while Scrooge remained unaltered in his outward form, the ghost grew older, clearly older. Are spirits' lives so short? My life upon this globe is very brief. It ends tonight. Tonight. The time is drawing near. Forgive me if I am not justified in what I ask, but I see something strange and not belonging to yourself protruding from your skirts. From the foldings of its robe it brought two children, wretched, abject, frightful. They knelt down at its feet and clung to the outer portions of its garment. They were a boy and girl, yellow, meager, ragged. Spirit, are they yours? They are man's, and they cling to me. The boy is ignorance, and the girl is want. Beware them both, and all of their degree. But most of all, beware this boy, for on his brow I see that written which is doom, unless the writing be erased. Have they no refuge or resource? Are there no prisons? Are there no workhouses? At this, the clock struck 12. Scrooge looked about him for the spirit, but saw it not. As the last stroke ceased to vibrate, he remembered the prediction of old Jacob Marley, and lifting up his eyes, beheld a phantom, draped and hooded, coming like a mist upon the ground towards him. The phantom slowly, gravely, solemnly approached. It was shrouded in a deep black garment which concealed its head, its form, leaving nothing of it visible, save for one outstretched hand. I am in the presence of the spirit of the things yet to come. You are here to show me things that have not happened, but will happen in the time before us. Is that so, spirit? The upper portion of the garment was contracted for an instant in its folds, as if the spirit had inclined its head. This was the only answer he received. Ghost of the future, I fear you more than any spectre I have seen. But as I know your purpose is to do me good, and as I hope to live to be a better man from what I was, I am prepared to bear your company and do so with a thankful heart. Will you not speak to me? It gave him no reply. The hand was pointed straight before him. I understand. The night is waning fast, and it is precious time to me, I know. Lead on, spirit. The ghost moved away as it had come towards him. Scrooge followed in the shadow of its dress, which bore him up. The city streets seemed to spring up about them and encompass them of its own act. There they were in the heart of it, amongst the merchants who hurried up and down and chinked the money in their pockets as they conversed in groups. The ghost stopped before one little knot of businessmen, and seeing that the hand was pointed towards him, Scrooge advanced to listen to their talk. No, I don't know much about it. Either way, I only know he's dead. Oh, when did he die? Last night, I believe. What was the matter with him? I thought he'd never died. Haven't heard. What's he done with his money? God knows. Left it with his company, perhaps. He hasn't left it with me, that's all I know. Oh, upon my life, it's likely to be a cheap funeral, for I don't know of anyone to go to it. Suppose we make up a party and volunteer. Well, I don't mind going, so long as a lunch is provided. Scrooge knew the men and looked to the spirit for an answer. It floated on into an obscure part of town where Scrooge had never penetrated, although he recognized its situation and its bad repute. Far in this den of infamous resort there lay a low-browed beetling shop, where iron, old rags, bottles, bones, and greasy offal were bought. Sitting in among the wares he dealt him was a gray-haired rascal of nearly 70 years. And as Scrooge and the ghost came into the presence of this gentleman, an old woman slunk into the shop. Why, here's a chance. Oh, you couldn't have met at a better place. Come into the parlor. Open up that bundle, old Joe, and let me know the value of it. What's this then? Bed curtains? Aye, bed curtains. You don't mean to say you took them down, rings and all, with him lying there? Of course I did. Why not? His blankets then? Whose else do you think? Isn't likely to take cold now without them, I dare say. Well, he didn't die of anything catching. Oh, don't you worry about that. I ain't so fond of his company that I'd loiter about him for such things if he were. Oh, you can look at that shirt till your eyes ache. You won't find an old or a threadbare place. It's the best he had, and a fine one, too. They'd have wasted it if it hadn't been for me. What do you call wasting of it? Oh, I put it on him to be buried in, to be sure. Someone was fool enough to do it, but I took it off him again. Scrooge listened to this dialogue in horror. As they sat, grouped about their spoils in the scanty light afforded by the old man's lamp, he viewed them with a detestation and disgust which could hardly have been greater were they demons marketing the corpse itself. Spirit, I see the fate of this unhappy man might be my own. My own life tends that way now. Merciful heavens, what is this? He recoiled in terror, for the entire scene had changed, and he had almost touched a bed. A bare, uncurtained bed, upon which there lay something covered up, which, although it was quite dumb, announced itself in awful language. A pale light rising in the outer air fell straight upon the bed, and on it, plundered and bereft, unwatched, unwept, uncared for, lay the body of this man. Spirit, this is a fearful place. In leaving it, I shall not leave its lesson. The ghost pointed an unmoved finger towards the bed. I understand. And I would do it if I could, but I have not the power, Spirit. I have not the power. Show me some tenderness connected with the death, or that dark chamber which we left just now will be forever present to me. The ghost of Christmas yet to come conducted him through streets familiar to his feet, and as they went, Scrooge looked here and there to find himself, but nowhere was he to be seen. They entered Bob Cratchit's dwelling and found the mother and the children seated round the fire. My eyes hurt so. And I would show weak eyes to your father when he comes home now for the world. But it must be near his time. Past it, rather. But he has walked home a little slower than he used to these last few evenings, Mother. I have known him walk with Tiny Tim upon his shoulder very fast indeed. Oh, and so have I, often. But he was very light, and your father loved him so that it was no trouble. Oh, is your father now? Bob, you're home. You went today, then, Robert? Yes, my dear. I wish you could have gone. It would have done you good to see how green a place it is. But you'll see it often. I told him we would walk there on a Sunday. My little child. My little child. Hynick. Something informs me that our parting moment is at hand. I know it, but I know not how. Tell me, what man was it whom we saw lying dead? The ghost of Christmas yet to come conducted him as before into a churchyard. Here the unhappy man whose name he had now to learn lay underneath the ground. The ghost stood among the graves and pointed down to one. Scrooge advanced towards it, trembling. Before I draw nearer to that stone to which you point, answer me one question. Are these the shadows of the things that will be, or are they shadows of the things that may be only? Men's courses will foreshadow certain ends, which if persevere in they must lead, but if these courses be departed from, the ends may change. Say it is so with what you show me. Scrooge advanced towards the grave, and following the finger, read upon the stone of the neglected grave his own name, Ebenezer Scrooge. Am I that man who lay upon the bed? Oh, no. No, Spirit, no. I am not the man I was. I will not be the man I must have been before this intercourse. Good Spirit, why show me this if I am past all hope? Good Spirit, your nature intercedes for me and pities me. Assure me I may change these shadows by an altered life. I will keep Christmas in my heart, honor it, Ollier. I will live in the past, the present, and the future. The spirit of all three shall strive within me. I will not shut out the lessons that they teach. Oh, tell me I may sponge away the writing on the stone. In his agony, he caught the spectral hand. It tried to free itself, but he was brave in his entreaty and detained it. The spirit, stronger yet, repulsed him, and lifted up his hands in a last prayer to have his fate reversed. He saw an alteration in the spirit's hood and dress. It shrunk, collapsed, and dwindled down into a bedpost. the present and the future, the spirits of all three shall strive within me. Oh, Jacob Marley, heaven in the Christmas time be praised for this. On my knees, Jacob, I say it on my knees. I'm as light as a feather. I'm as happy as an angel. I'm as merry as a schoolboy. I'm as giddy as a drunken man. Merry Christmas to everyone and Happy New Year to all the world. I don't know what day of the month it is. I don't know how long I've been amongst the spirits. I don't know anything. I'm quite the baby. I don't care. I'd rather be a baby. Hello there. Bells. Glorious bells. What's today? What? Oh, what's today, my fine fellow? Today? Why, it's Christmas Day. Oh, it's Christmas Day. Oh, I haven't missed it. Oh, but the spirits have done it all in one night. Well, of course they can. They can do anything they like. Of course they can. Do you know the poulterers in the next street? The one at the corner? Why, you know, I did. Do you know if they still have the prize turkey hanging there? Not the little prize turkey, the big one. What? One as big as me? Yes, my buck. It's hanging there now. Oh, it is. Oh, go and buy it and have them bring it here so that I might give them the address of where to take it. Come back with the man and I'll give you a shilling. Come back with him in less than 5 minutes and I'll give you half a crown. I'll have them deliver it to Bob Cratchit's house. Oh, it's quite twice the size of Tiny Tim. Now, the hand with which he wrote the address was not a